Hello and welcome to Jolineknitsalot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and the things I get up to here in Edmonton. It's definitely fall and it's time to pull out the woolly knits here. I'm wearing my Stockholm pullover. It's a pattern by Petite Knits and it's a cute little vest that I knit a couple years ago using a couple of different yarns held together for a cute maro. I didn't quite have enough of either yarn to make anything substantial, so I held two together. They're two fingering weight yarns to make a approximated DK weight, cute little vest. And I was enjoying wearing my tessellated vest so much, I decided to pull out my only other vest in my wardrobe. So you may see them making an appearance. I'm sort of enjoying wearing them because they keep you cozy without overheating. So it's a great layering piece and a great piece for transitional weather like we're having right now. How have you been? The last couple of weeks I have had the opportunity to meet some knitters, to take my knitting on the road a little bit. I was knitting at the Fiber Nook over the weekend. I've also been knitting at lots of volleyball games and other things. So I've been sort of knitting on the road, and so some of my knitting reflects that knitting that I can do while I'm doing something else. But before we get into what I've been knitting, I think I'd like to share with you what I am sharing. I'll be sharing this lovely sock set by Polka Dot Creek. It is a self-striping sock set with a 50-gram self-striping skein and a 20-gram mini in the Joline colorway, corrected by my daughter. And this lovely sock set will be going to a viewer from last episode as we're celebrating 3 years of Jolineknitsalot and reaching a bit of a milestone of 750 subscribers. So this lovely sock set, plus some other little goodies that I'm going to be throwing in, will be going to a randomly chosen viewer who left a comment on my last video. And that viewer is Rachel.King789. I will put your name right here. Congratulations, Rachel. I hope you enjoy knitting some Joline socks, and I'd love to see a picture of them when they're done. Please send me an email to jolineknitsalot@gmail.com. Feel free to email me if you're Rachel or you're not Rachel. I'd love to hear from you. We can talk about what you're knitting, or if you have questions about anything I talk about on this podcast. So congratulations, Rachel. Please reach out to me via email and I'll make sure that you get this prize coming your way. The last couple of weeks I have had quite a few little things on the needles and some bigger things on the needles. The big thing that I finished was my Wavy Gravy wrap. And it kind of is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I don't know why. I got to play around with the shop sample when I was at the Lamb & Kid in Bainbridge Island on my recent trip to Seattle and Knit City. This gorgeous wrap I would absolutely recommend to anybody who's looking for something kind of cozy and easy knit. The pattern is absolutely memorizable. Once you've done a couple of repeats, you're off to the races and you know exactly what you're doing. I used Big Birdie that I got at the Lamb & Kid, which is an amazing yarn. It's really, really fluffy. It's an alpaca silk yarn. So I'm not sure if you can see that it's got a bit of a halo. It's super soft and light and fluffy. I did 7 pattern repeats because that was the right length for me. I'm not a super tall person. So I think with the colors that I purchased, which was 5 different colors, I easily had enough to do another repeat, or probably 2, but that just was more than I needed for this scarf. It's got a generous width. The pattern comes with 3 different widths, and I did the medium size. And I think it's great. I think it's fabulous for fall to just throw over your shoulders like this for something cozy. And oh, that is nice. So that is a cozy way to wear it. Or I think with a jacket, I could easily wear it like a scarf, just toss it over around. And this is probably how I'll be wearing it the most. Like this, with a big jacket over top to keep me cozy. It's a fabulous, fabulous pattern. I couldn't recommend it more. I think it's great that it comes in different widths so you can make the one that suits you best. And this yarn is just fabulous. Now, a friend of mine and I both knit the same scarf because we both loved it very much. And we're absolutely looking for more opportunities to knit with this yarn because it is just an amazing, amazing yarn. It's soft and lofty. It comes in great colors, I think, as you can see on this wrap. And there are more and more patterns coming out to be knit using this yarn. So look forward to me knitting with some more sort of bulkier but lightweight yarns. I think there might be another vest in my future. Anyway, this is the Wavy Gravy wrap. I will put the designer's name here because sadly I am not very good at remembering designers' names, but I would absolutely recommend it if you're looking for a cute accessory. And because of the, whoops, show you the right side, because of the lofty and the lofty nature of this yarn, and because it's an Aran weight yarn, it knit up super fast. So you could absolutely knit some of these for gifts. I have about 30 grams of each color left over, and I plan on knitting some sherbet bandanas for some gifts this holiday season. And that's my Wavy Gravy shawl wrap. Now, because I was spending some time at the Fiber Nook over the weekend, I was talking to some of the ladies at the store, and I am going to be knitting up a couple of shop samples for them. So the first one that I finished, but is a little bit damp, is a Haro Hat. This is knit in some Shabui Nest. Nest is a DK weight yarn, and the Haro Hat calls for a worsted weight, but I found that this DK worked just fine. I used two colors, as you can see. So this is one side of it. And if I flip it inside out, you can see the other side. The Haro Hat, being brioche with two colors, is absolutely reversible, especially if you clip off your ends, which I haven't done yet. The interesting thing about this yarn by Shabui is that it, let me see if I can find some to show you. It's a very round yarn. Let's look at the white one. And if you can see the yarn there, it is a wool yarn, but you can see it's got like thread wrapping the yarn. It makes for an interesting texture. So it's not a super even. It's a little bit almost bumpy because of that yarn, but I think in the brioche, it looks fabulous. And I would be really interested to know how this looks in cables. Because it's such a round yarn, I think it might be really interesting in cables. So here's the right side. And I'm trying not to stretch it too much because it still is damp. But I would absolutely recommend giving it a try. Fabulous hat. And in this Haro Hat pattern, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, I think it works really, really nicely. I made the largest size, and I'm trying very hard not to stretch it out too much because brioche is a very stretchy fabric. So I don't want the hat to become misshapen. But yeah, a Haro Hat, knit in some Shabui Nest. I had two skeins, one of each color, and I have quite a bit left over. In fact, this is how much I have left over. So probably a half a ball, give or take. So you might be able to make two hats if you had two skeins of the yarn. And I have one final finished object, and that is a pair of super mittens. If you watch this channel at all, you'll know that I'm a fan of this pattern. It's a pattern that came out in the Weekend Knitting book by Melanie Fallick, and I have knit this pattern many, many times. And I decided that I needed some heavy-duty mittens for walking my dog. Now, I have found that the best yarn for these mittens is Woolly's Thick and Quick. It is a bulky weight yarn, maybe even super bulky weight. I will clarify here. It is 80% acrylic, 20% wool, And when you knit these mittens at a firm gauge, they are quite waterproof and very wind resistant. So here's a pair of the super mittens that I have made. And so super quick. I knit these on 6.5mm needles, and I use the carousel colorway, which is a really fun sort of slow fade colorway. You can see I have different thumbs, which I don't mind at all. And these are going to be some super duper mittens for walking my dog, who you can maybe hear barking in the background. Here in Canada, winters can be quite cruel. In fact, very cold. And I wanted to have a super duper pair of mittens ready for when that weather comes, because sometimes the weather can change very quickly. And so I would absolutely recommend the super mittens pattern. If you followed my channel at all, you'll know I've knit this pattern before, particularly for donation, because it's such a chonky knit. I think I cast on 26 stitches for myself. It's not a lot of stitches. So they go super quickly, and you could use a couple of strands of DK or worsted held together if you were looking for a pattern to make for other people, either kids or adults in your life, because this pattern comes in many sizes, or to give away to people who might need some cozy mittens this winter. So these are my super mittens, knit in some woolies, thick and quick, in the carousel colorway. I'm really happy with them. I think they're really cheerful. And that's all my finished objects, but I do have some things I've been working on, as always. One of the projects that I think I showed you last time was a pair of DRK everyday socks for my husband. Now these socks are, as always, impossible to show you without them looking really silly. So here's the first one, and it looks ridiculous. And that's because it's all knit in 2x2 ribs. If I show it to you this way, I think you can see how much these socks will stretch. I knit these using some Leo and Roxy marled sock yarn. They carry this yarn on their website as a sock kit. So sometimes it comes with a white and a contrasting color. So you can make some work socks in whatever color you like, or you can get the skein by itself. So I have both in my stash. And this was just the plain skein that I decided to use. And as you can see, like once you start pulling it apart, the sock will shorten up quite a bit and also stretch to fit his foot. Now the interesting thing with the way that Andrea Mowry designed these socks was she used a fleegle heel. And the fleegle heel, which looks like this from the back, starts at the very back of your foot. So if you think about the toes as the tip of the front of your foot, the very back of your heel is right here. And so all of this ribbing is the bottom of your foot, and then the very back of your heel starts right here. I did a contrast color heel and more ribbing, and then I did a very sock monkey sort of top of the sock. I didn't make them super tall because I don't think my husband would appreciate a super tall sock. So that's sock number 1. I've kept a stitch marker in where I started the increases for the gusset of the heel. Now let's see if I can show you that. The marling yarn makes it difficult to see, but starting right here, increases happen in the ribbed pattern to create a gusset heel that increases this way up into the top of the fleegle heel. So I kept a little stitch marker right there so I could remember where I was or remember how far I knit before starting the increases on my second sock, which I have just started. And this one looks even more ridiculous. These socks. So I've done the toe and a little bit of the foot, and it has been excellent for watching at volleyball games. I normally knit my socks on DPNs. That's my preferred method of knitting in a really small circumference. As I think with a lot of knitters, we all have our sort of quirks in terms of where we like to use different knitting techniques. For me, when I'm knitting socks, often I will use DPNs. However, for some reason, when I knit toe-up socks, including this pattern by Andrea Mowry, but other toe-up socks as well. I tend to knit them magic loop. And I think that is because my favorite way of casting on a toe-up sock is using a Turkish cast on, where you wrap the yarn around both of your needles and then start knitting off of that round. I think it makes for a really nice toe. This one was a little bit loose, but I think it'll be great. And I tend to just keep using my magic loop on up the sock. So for some reason, I knit my socks top down with DPNs and bottom up on magic loop. I like to knit sleeves on 12-inch needles, and I like to use circular needles for pretty much everything else. How about you? What kind of needles do you like to use? And do you have like certain needles for certain projects? I'd be interested to know. I have needles in different materials. So for example, these are metal, and I tend to use metal needles in the smaller sizes, partly I think because I have snapped DPNs that were wooden, just because they're much thinner. But I will use wooden needles, particularly Licca needles, in circular knitting. But you'll see later that I am using some of their copper needles, which are metal, on my shawl project. So do you have rules or ideas on how you use your needles, or do you just pick them for by whim? I'd be interested to know. Anyway, this is what that Leo and Roxy yarn looks like in the skein, or in a ball, I guess. And here is the beginning of sock number 2. I'm hoping to have these done by the end of the month, but who knows? The other thing I have on my needles just this week is almost a completed sock. If you've watched this channel before, you may have heard me talk about Summer Lee Designs. Summer Lee is a fabulous sock designer, and she has many socks out for sale on Ravelry and on her website. In fact, just this week, she's come out with a pattern for a sock with a little pocket on it. It's adorable. But she was hosting a knit along this month, the month of October, for her polka dot socks. And I thought, why not? So I started sock number 1. This pattern is a colorwork pattern, as you can see, where you knit polka dotted socks. And she has all sorts of great ideas on how to incorporate contrast colors for toes and heels and cuffs. So for this sock, I have decided to go for a hot pink toe, and I will be cutting in for an afterthought heel between these 2 rows of polka dots. I actually blocked this sock because when I was knitting it on my DPNs, it was a little bit lumpy, and that's because of color work in the round. When you are moving past joins in DPNs, sometimes the yarns will not quite move around as nicely. And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't having any lumps and bumps in my knitting, and I'm not. I also was quite careful to keep my floats quite loose because I wanted this sock to be able to stretch. One of the things with stranded color work is that the little strands in the back of your work can pull in if you don't use a really loose gauge. And that means that your fabric will be less stretchy and less giving than a normal, let's say, stockinette stitch. The other thing is that if your floats aren't loose enough, they can pull the fabric in, which I didn't want for a pair of socks. So these are my floats. I think they look pretty good, especially after blocking. Blocking really can solve a lot of problems in stranded color work, but not all your problems. So if your floats are too tight, blocking's not going to help. So this is what the wrong side looks like, and this is what the right side looks like. I thought I'd ask you what you thought about the colors for my sock. I'm at the point where I'm probably going to start the next sock soon and knit it up and use the same color for toes, but I was thinking about maybe introducing a different color for the heel. I have some, I have a lot of different colored yarn. One of the colors I was thinking about was this red, which I know pink and red you either love it or you hate it. So what do you think? What if I put in a red heel? Or the other color I have is a sort of bright blue color that I used for my Stephen West Mystery Shawl. Why don't I grab it as an option? So what do you think of this color for a heel? Let me know in the comments below if you think I should do a pink heel, red heel, or blue heel. I'd love to know your thoughts. I am using some West Yorkshire Spinners, my favorite, in the milk bottle colorway because I have so much of this around and I just love it as a workhorse yarn. The polka dots, oh, now you can see it. I'm using some Knit Picks Stroll Glimmer, which has some sparkly yarn in it. So check it out. The polka dots are sparkly. And then the fuchsia mini for the toe was yarn from Scrumptious Pearl that I just had in my stash. So it's just a mini. It's probably a 20-gram mini, so I have quite a bit of it. Oh yeah, those are that's my first polka dot sock, awaiting a heel, and also awaiting a mate. So yeah, those are the things that I've been working on this month. When I'm not working on the Stephen West Mystery Knit Along. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened with the Knit Along. You may have heard about it or you may not have. If you're interested, please stick around. I will talk a little bit about my thoughts on the Knit Along and then I'll show you the different clues as they came out. If you're not interested or you don't want to know what the clues look like, I will say goodbye to you now. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. So for those of you who have stuck around, the West Knits Knit Along, the Shawl Knit Along in the fall is always a really big event. And Stephen West has been working really hard, I think, to up his game every year. So every year there's new techniques that he introduces. He also makes a video for every clue, walking you step by step through every step of the clues so you're never confused and you always have something to look back on. He has many test knitters and many people working to make this knit along the best experience for knitters as possible. When Clue 1 came out on the 5th of October, many people were super excited, myself included, to get started. And I just started knitting, working my way through the clue. And I had finished, over half of the clue when I started to become aware of some comments and concerns about what that clue looked like. There were people in the first couple of days after the clue was released who commented that they felt like the clue looked like a swastika, which is a hate symbol. And this created quite a bit of a hubbub, I think, in the people who were knitting the Stephen West Knit Along. Stephen West did a really good job of meeting knitters where they were, quickly pivoting to change the first clue to a design that was more simple, but also not inclusive of that hate symbol. And I think it took a little time. There was a video that was left up a little longer than some people would have liked, but I think that Stephen West handled a very difficult situation with a lot of grace. He encouraged knitters to put aside the first version of the clue and to move forward in a sort of more open and inclusive mind frame, to change to his simpler design and to make sure that knitters weren't using a design that some people construed as or saw as resembling a swastika. Now, I had started knitting and I didn't see initially the resemblance to that hate symbol myself. And so when all of the comments were happening, I was like, well, I don't really want to change. I'm liking what I'm making. And I emailed a friend and she said, you know what, put it aside and give it some thought, which was really, really excellent advice. So I put it aside and I quickly realized that I did not want to be knitting something and wearing something that some people might see as offensive. I don't think I would ever want to wear something that was hurtful to other people. And I also thought about what it would be like if I saw a design that many people were super excited about, knitting excitedly, but I found to be offensive to myself. How would I want that situation handled? And would I want people to just brush my concerns aside? So I ripped my needles out and I set that bit of knitting aside and I started again, knitting the new version of Clue 1. So that is what I knit, and I'll show you a quick picture of it here. It is a more simple design, I think, than probably Stephen West would have liked to start his shawl with. Certainly his initial pattern was more intricate, but I think that he did the right thing in encouraging knitters to move away from it and to not use that pattern at all. And some knitters were changing the colors in an attempt to make it look less like the hate symbol that people saw. But I think that moving away from it entirely was a really great move on Stephen's part to show that he was quite upset by the fact that his initial design resembled a hate symbol. I think that he was shocked that he didn't see, and his test knitters, nobody saw that resemblance. But once it was pointed out, I think that it was very appropriate for him to move away from that and to move in a new direction, which I'm sure was very difficult and stressful. I think it was difficult and stressful for some of the knitters who had knit the first clue and wanted to move on with that. But not nearly as difficult as it was for Stephen, who had come up with the idea to admit that this was a mistake and wanting to move away from it. And I think he handled that very difficult situation with a lot of grace. And so I decided I wanted to move forward with Stephen in a way that would be not offensive to anyone, or not obviously portraying something that resembled a hate symbol. So this is my original, this is my Clue 1. So as you can imagine, the first week was full of a lot of videos and chat room talk, and that's okay. It took a little longer than I initially thought also, and that's also okay. So my Clue 1 was completed and I moved on to Clue 2, which involved some eyelet rows on the ends of this initial diamond shape. I'll show you a picture here. That was relatively smooth sailing after the controversy and the discussions surrounding Clue 1. So let me show you my piece of knitting and where I'm at right now. This here is my center panel, and this is Clue 2 with the eyelets alternating with garter stitches. I'm using a kit from Frankie Gray Fibers, and this year I went with a very neutral palette, partly because in past years I have chosen lots of really colorful options and tried to be kind of crazy and wild in keeping with Stephen's approach to knitting. But I often really was drawn to those pieces that were knit in a more neutral palette. So I chose a very, very neutral palette by Frankie Gray Fibers, and I've been really happy with how it's turning out. My central panel here is simply garter stitch knit. It was knit in the round, and it's just a square. And so I do have some thoughts about how I might embellish this square at the end. I wanted to see how the other clues turned out first. So that's Clue 2, which is starting with these eyelet rows here and moving all the way through a few eyelet repeats. And just yesterday I started Clue 3. Clue 3 is using slip stitches, and again, more of the striping, to create a different textural pattern. So here's my beginning of Clue 3. Now Clue 3 uses strands of yarn slipped on the front side of the knitting to create these chevron shapes. I have been knitting my slip stitches relatively loosely because so if you look at it this way, they look almost like they're pouching down a little bit or too loose. But once I block this piece of knitting, I wanted those strands to be able to stretch with the knitting. And if your strands of knitting are too loose, then they won't move with the fabric. And I wanted a fabric that would give. So this, just to give you some context, here's the central, let's do it this way. Here's the center square. Here is row 2 or clue 2, the eyelets sort of extending out from that central square. And now clue 3 is moving across so that the top side, what I presume will be the top side of the shawl, is one long straight line. And the bottom of the shawl had some stitches cast off. And now I'm working sort of a triangular piece of knitting like this that I'm assuming will end up creating a triangle this way, and then that's the same will happen on this side. And so once I've completed clue 3, it should have a straight top and then sort of triangular sides and then a flat bottom, sort of like a trapezoid, if I remember my shapes correctly. But who knows? This is a Stephen West knit along, and Stephen West can go in some wackadoodle directions. So what I'm thinking is that this top part will remain long, and then the bottom part will come down and in, and then the next clue will follow the bottom shape of the shawl to make it longer and possibly wider. That's what I'm thinking right now, but I still have to finish clue 3 and then wait a whole week until clue 4 comes out and I can discover if I was right in the direction that Stephen's knitting in. I have no idea what we're going to be knitting next because Stephen is really good at surprising knitters with different textures, different techniques, and that's why many of us like to knit his knit-alongs. So I'm really enjoying the process, and I think that actually the simple center was a nice way to start, and also maybe a reminder to start with an open mind and an open heart and to listen to other people when they raise concerns, like Stephen did. So that's where I'm at with my knitting. I have some socks on the needles, and I will be working on Stephen West's shawl clues as they come out. I'm looking forward to getting the first half anyway of clue 3 done, so I can get a better sense of how big this shawl is going to be and an idea of how this shawl is shaping up. Are you knitting Stephen West shawl too? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? And what did you do for clue 1? Part of the fabulousness that came out of the clue 1 sort of change or pivot was that a lot of knitters took it upon themselves to design their own clue 1. And there are some people who came up with fabulous ideas. There were some various color work options, not color work, but where the triangles of the square were knit in different colors. So more of a sort of a fragmented sort of approach, really interesting. Some people did some stockinette or added eyelets, also very interesting. And some people made crochet granny squares, which is brilliant, as the beginning of this shawl. Fabulous. So much amazing creativity that came out of an opportunity to change and to think differently. And I think that's amazing. And I really love seeing all the different options that people came up with to make a square at the center of their shawl and to make it their own. I hope in the next couple of weeks you find time to make something your own, whether that's your knitting or your crafting or just your everyday life. I hope that you also keep an open mind and an open heart when faced with a change. It's not always easy. The next couple of weeks, I plan on knitting a lot. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.